Y'all, I'm about to get off work. If I keep pausing in the beginning, I have 8 more minutes, so bear with me. We're gonna go back into the view of the Hebrews. We are on page 77 in chapter 3. I'm gonna go back up. Suppose a people to have been lately discovered in that sequestered region, appearing as we should rationally expect the nation of Israel to appear at this period, had the account given by the writer in Esdras been a fact. Suppose them to be found in tribes with heads of tribes, but destitute of letters, and in a savage state. Suppose among different tribes the following traditionary fragments are by credible witnesses picked up, some particulars among one region of them, and some among another, while all appear evidently to be of the same family. Suppose them to have escaped the polytheism of the pagan world, and to acknowledge one and only one God, the Great Spirit, who created all things seen and unseen. Suppose the name retained by many of them for this Great Spirit to be El or Ali, the old Hebrew name of God, and Yohewah, whereas the Hebrew name for Lord was Jehovah. Also they call the great first cause Yah, the Hebrew name being Jah. Suppose you find most of them professing great reverence for this great Yahuwah, calling him the great beneficent, supreme Holy Spirit, and the only object of worship. Suppose the most intelligent of them to be elated with the idea that this God has ever been the head of their community, that their fathers were once in covenant with him, and the rest of the world were the accursed people, as out of covenant with God. Suppose you find them on certain occasions singing in religious dance, hallelujah, and we know the etymology of that, or praise to Jah. We know there was no J in our language. Also singing Yahuwah, Shilu, Hebrew. We know the hijack is there. You have to look into it for yourself. I'm not going to even go into it. You find them counting their time as did ancient Israel, and in a manner different from all other nations. They keep a variety of religious feasts, which must resemble those kept in ancient Israel. On page 78, you find an evening feast among them, in which a bone of the animal must not be broken. If the provision be more than one family can eat, a neighbor must be called in to help eat it. And if any of it be still left, it must be burned before the next rising sun. You find them eating bitter vegetables to cleanse themselves from sin. You find they never eat the hollow of the thigh of any animal. They inform that their fathers practiced circumcision. Some of them have been in the habit of keeping a jubilee. They have their places answering to the cities of refuge in ancient Israel, and these no blood is ever shed by any avenger. You find them with their temples, such as they be, their holy of holies in their temple, into which it is death for a common person to enter. They have their high priests who officiate in their temples and make their yearly atonement there in a singular pontifical dress, which they fancy to be in the likeness of one worn by their predecessors in ancient times, with their breastplate and various holy ornaments. The high priest, when addressing to his people what they call the old divine speech, calls them the beloved and holy people, and urges them to imitate their virtuous ancestors, and tells them of their beloved land flowing with milk and honey. They tell you that Yahuwah once chose their nation from all the rest of mankind to be his peculiar people, that a book which God gave was once theirs, and then things went well with them. But other people got it from them, then they fell under the displeasure of the Great Spirit, but that they shall at some times regain it. They inform you some of their fathers once had a spirit to foretell future events and to work miracles. Suppose, page 79, they have their imitation of the Ark of the Covenant, where were deposited their most sacred things, into which it is the greatest crime for any common people to look. All their males must appear at the temple at 3 noted feasts in a year. They inform you of the ancient flood, of the preservation of one family in a vessel, of this man in the ark sending out first a great bird and then a little one to see if the waters were gone, that the great one returned no more, but the little one returned with a branch. They tell you of the confusion of languages once when people were building a great high place, and of the longevity of the ancients, that they lived till their feet were worn out with walking and their throats with eating. You find them with their traditional history that their ancient fathers once lived where people were dreadfully wicked, and that 9/10 of their fathers took counsel and left that wicked place, being led by the Great Spirit into this country. They that came through a region where it was always winter, snow and frozen, that they came to a great water, and their way hither was thus obstructed till God dried up that water. Probably it froze between the islands in the Bering Straits. You'll find them keeping an annual feast at the time their ears of corn become fit for use, and none of their corn is eaten till a part of it is brought to this feast, and certain religious ceremonies performed. You find them keeping an annual feast in which 12 men must cut 12 sapling poles to make a booth, here on an altar made of 12 stones, on which no tool may pass. They must sacrifice. You find them with the custom of washing and anointing their dead, and when, page 80, in deep affliction, laying their hand on their mouth, and their mouth in the dust. Suppose you should find things like those among such a people, without books or letters, but wholly in a savage state, in a region of the world lately discovered away in the direction stated by the aforenoted writer in the Apocrypha. And having been ever secluded from the knowledge of the civilized world, would you hesitate to say you had found the 10 tribes of Israel, and that God sent them to that sequestered region of the earth to keep them there, a distinct people during an outcast state of at least 2,500 years? Would you not say we have just such kind of evidence as must at last bring that people to light among the nations? And would you not say, here is much more evidence of this kind, of their being the people of Israel, than could rationally have been expected after the lapse of Israel, of 2,500 years in a savage state? Methinks I hear every person whisper his full assent that upon the suppositions made we have found the most essential pile of the prophet Ezekiel's valley of dry bones. Those things are more than mere supposition. It is believed they are capable of being ascertained as facts with substantial evidence. Good authorities from men who have been eye and ear witnesses assure us that these things are facts. But you inquire where or who are the people thus described. They are the aborigines of our continent. Their place, their language, their traditions amount to all that has been hinted. These evidences are not all found among any one tribe of Indians, nor may all the Indians in any tribe where various of these evidences are found be able to exhibit them. We're on page 81, chapter 3. It is enough if what they call their beloved aged men in one tribe have clearly exhibited some of them, and others exhibited others of them. And if among their various tribes the whole have been by various of their beloved or wise men exhibited, this is stated has been the fact. Men have been gradually perceiving this evidence for more than a half century, and a new light has been from time to time shed on the subject, as will appear. The North American reviewers, in reviewing a sermon of Dr. Jarvis on this subject delivered before the New York Historical Society, in which he attempts to adduce much evidence to show that the natives of this continent are the tribes of Israel. I'm going to read that again. The North American reviewers, in reviewing a sermon of Dr. Jarvis on this subject delivered before the New York Historical Society, in which he attempts to adduce much evidence to show that the natives of this continent are the tribes of Israel, remarked thus: the history and character of the Indian tribes of North America, which are the African Americans, so-called blacks, so-called this, so-called that. The history and character of the Indian tribes of North America, which was a name given by them for us. We didn't have Indian we were just tribes, which have for some time been a subject of no inconsiderable curiosity and interest with the learned in Europe, have not till lately attracted much notice among ourselves. But as the Indian nations are now fast vanishing, and the individuals of them come less frequently under our observation, we also, as well as our European brethren, are beginning to take a more lively interest than ever in the study of their character and history, which means they're trying to wipe you out. In the course of their remarks, they add to the testimonies here adduced by Dr. Jarvis, i.e., that the Indians are the 10 tribes of Israel. And I don't mean the Mongols. I mean so-called African Americans that are native to here, that your ancestors are on the dolls rolls, that were born here, raised here, that were passed down by oral tradition. You are from here, no doubt about it. I'm not talking about straight hair Indians. I'm talking about kinky, curly, coily haired tribes here. This is all we know. We don't have evidence of slave ships. There's no ship in a museum anywhere. What else? I get all mad. The history and character of the Indian tribes of North America, which have for some time been a subject of no inconsiderable curiosity and interest with the learned in Europe, have not till lately attracted so much notice among ourselves. Okay. Now, in the course of their remarks, they add to the testimonies here adduced by Dr. Jarvis, that the Indians of the 10 tribes of Israel might have been added. Several of our New England historians from the first settlement of the country, some they proceed to mention, and then add that Reverend Messrs. Samuel Sewall, fellow Harvard College, and Samuel Willard, vice president of the same, were of opinion that the Indians are the descendants of Israel. Were of the same opinion that Samuel Sewall and Samuel Willard that the Indians are the descendants of Israel. We're on page 82. Dr. Jarvis notes this is an hypothesis, which, you know how sometimes you said something for so long and now we don't know what words mean or how they're pronounced with or without the vowels, and it just looks funny. But hypothesis, which has been a favorite topic with European writers, and as a subject to which it is hoped the Americans may be said to be waking up at last, which we still know in 2017 they have not. Manasseh ben Israel, in a work entitled The Hope of Israel, has written to show that the American Indians are tribes of Israel, but as we assess to his authors, we may consult them for ourselves. The main pillar of his evidence is James Adair, Esquire. Mr. Adair was a man of established character, as appears from good authority. He lived a trader among the Indians in the south of North America for 40 years. He left them and returned to England in 1774 and there published his history of the American Indians and his reason for being persuaded that they are the 10 tribes of Israel. Remarking on their descent and origin, he concludes thus: from the most accurate observations I could make in the long time I traded among the Indian Americans, I was forced to believe them lineally descended from the Israelites. Had the 9 tribes and a half of Israel that were carried off by Shalmaneser and settled in Media continued there long, it is very probable by intermarrying with natives, and from their natural fickleness and proneness to idolatry, and also from the force of example that they would have adopted and bowed before the gods of Media and Assyria, and would have carried them along with them. But there is not a trace of this idolatry among the Indians. Mr. Adair gives his opinion that the 10 tribes, soon after their banishment from the land of Israel, left Media and reached this continent from the northwest, probably before carrying away the Jews of Babylon. Page 83. A summary will be given of the arguments of Mr. Adair and of a number of other writers on this subject, as the evidence given by Mr. Adair appears in some respects the most momentous and conclusive. I shall adduce a testimonial in his behalf in the Star in the West, published by Honorary Elias Bondednot, LL.D. upon this subject, that venerable man says the writer of these sheets has made a free use of Mr. Adair's history of the Indians, which renders it necessary that something further should be said of him. Sometime about the year 1774, Mr. Adair came to Elizabethtown, where the writer lived, with his manuscript, and applied to Mr. Livingston, afterward governor of New Jersey, a correct scholar, requesting him to correct his manuscript. He brought ample recommendations and gave a good account of himself. Our political troubles with Great Britain then increasing, it being the year before the commencement of the Revolutionary War, Mr. Adair, who was on his way to Great Britain, was advised not to risk being detained from his voyage till the work could be critically examine, but to set off as soon as possible. He accordingly took passage in the first vessel bound to England. As soon as the war was over, Mr. Bondinot asked for himself. The writer sent to London to obtain a copy of this work. After reading it with care, he strictly examined a gentleman, then a member with him in Congress and of excellent character, who had acted as our agent among the Indians to the southward during the war, relative to the points of fact stated by Mr. Adair, without letting him know the design, and from him found all the leading facts mentioned on page 84 in Mr. Adair's history, fully confirmed from his own personal knowledge. Here are the evidences of two great and good men most artlessly uniting in the leading facts stated by Mr. Adair. The character of Mr. Bondinot, who was for some time president of the American Bible Society, is well known. He was satisfied with the truth of Mr. Adair's history and that the natives of our land are Hebrews, the 10 tribes, and he hence published his Star in the West on this subject, which is most worthy of the perusal of all men. From various authors and travelers among the Indians, the fact that the American Indians are the 10 tribes of Israel will be attempted to be proved by the following arguments. Number 1, the American native have one origin. Number 2, their language appears to have been Hebrew. Number 3, they have had their imitation of the Ark of the Covenant in ancient Israel. Number 4, they have been in practice of circumcision. Number 5, they have acknowledged one and only one God. Number 6, the variety of traditions, historical and religious, go to events that they are the 10 tribes of Israel. Number 7, the celebrated William Penn gives account of the natives of Pennsylvania, which go to corroborate the same point. Number 8, they're having a tribe answering in various respects to the tribe of Levi sheds further light on this subject. Number 9, several prophetic traits of character given to the Hebrews do accurately apply to the Aborigines of America. Aborigines. Page 85. Number 10, the Indian being in tribes with their heads and names of tribes affords further light upon this subject. Number 11, they're having an imitation of ancient city of refuge evidences the truth of our subject. And number 12, other Indian rights and various other considerations go to evince the fact that these people are the 10 tribes of Israel. So number 1 states the American native have one origin. The language has a variety of dialects, but all are believed by some good judges to be the same radical language. Various noted authors agree in this. Charlevius, in his History of Canada, says the Algonquin and the Huron languages, which he says are as real the same as the French and the Old Norman are the same, have between them the language of all the savage nations we are acquainted with. Whoever should well understand both of these might travel without an interpreter more than 1,500 leagues of country and make himself understood by 100 different nations, who have each their peculiar tongue, meaning dialect. The Algonquin was the dialect of the Wolf tribe or the Mohegan, and most of the native tribes of New England and Virginia. Dr. Jonathan Edwards, son of President Edwards, lived in his youth among the Indians, as his father was a missionary among them before he was called to Princeton College, and he became familiar with the Mohegan dialect as with his mother tongue. He had also a good knowledge of the Mohawk dialect. He pronounced the Mohegan the most extensive of all the Indian dialects of North America. He names not less than 16 tribes besides the original, page 86, tribes of New England, as agreeing with the Mohegan. Herein, the doctor agrees with the testimony of Ch.3, just noted. Here we find a cogent argument in favor of the Indians of North America, at least as being one origin, and arguments will be furnished that the Indians of South America are probably of the same origin. Dr. Boudinot, who for more than 40 years was of opinion that the Indians are the 10 tribes, and who sought and obtained much evidence on this subject, assures us that the syllables which compose the word Yahuwah and Yah are the roots of a great number of Indian words through different tribes. They make great use of these words and of the syllables which compose the names of God, also which form the word through their nations for thousands of miles, especially in their religious songs and dances. With beating and exact keep of time, they begin religious dance, thus ha ha ha, then li li li, next lu lu lu, and then close ya ya ya. This is asserted. It is asserted is their traditional song of praise to the Great Spirit. This, it is asserted, is sung in South as well as North America. And this author says, two Indians who belong to far distant nations may, without the knowledge of each other's language, except from the general idiom of all their tribes, converse with each other and make contracts without an interpreter. This shows them to have been of one origin. And we already know what the breakdown of that word means, but if they were seeing it in this context, then somebody look that up. Duprat says in his History of Louisiana, the nations of North America derive their origin from the same country, since at bottom they all have the same manners and usages and the same manner of speaking and thinking. Now, I'm going to stop right here. We're on the bottom of page 86. We'll pick up there going into 87. Again, this is chapter 3. In the view of the Hebrews, peace and power to you, and I'm out.